tea. Are you excited? My advice, stay up all night. Stay up all night Tuesday so you'll be fresh, ready to roll. Yeah, eat a lot. Just eat Funyuns all night. I'm trying to think of the most awful junk food I can think of, and it's Funyuns. I use the term food very liberally on that. All right. So tomorrow, we finish up duty. I will give you some stuff. We got to start thinking about the AP exam. The AP exam is May 8th, which as we all know is a beautiful day. It's a Friday, week after the vigilante parade. Isn't that exciting? So we got to start kind of thinking about it, getting stuff ready for it. Almost all of you are taking it. The few are not, you stop what you think you have to do, but not that big of a deal. And by the way, that's the Soviet T-72 tank. Its automatic loader just had a bad habit of ripping off the arm or legs of the gunner, which is bad for crew morale. That was okay. So where do we finish here? I know it's way back when. So we got the Father Coughlin, the APUSH, we got the TBA, the AAA, the NRA, all the AAs, all the administrations.
We're still finishing up FDR's enemies from the left.
Okay, very good. So we're right. This look right. Yeah. Communists. Did we get here? Fellow travelers. There were a lot of people who toyed with socialism, who were actually rabidly anti-fascist. The term anti-fascist will come out in the 1930s because fascism was brand new. And they toyed with communism and socialism, even though they maybe wanted some socialistic prescriptions. They were not full-fledged socialists. This would become a big deal after World War II in the second Red Scare, known as McCarthyism. And FDR used this opposition from the left, saying to more conservative, especially Democrats from the South, you better support what I want, because you might get the Communist Party for a Soviet America, whatever that meant. And yeah, I got to say, a lot of the communists in the United States, they bought the propaganda that the Soviet Union was creating this workers' paradise. It was not. But they bought that propaganda that totalitarian state existed. But there's two names you need to know. And these guys have come up in the past on the AP exam too. Dr. Francis Townsend, to deal with the significant problem of poverty amongst the elderly, proposed a $2,000 a year old age pension for every single retired person, which was more than double the median income at that time. And Townsend clubs came all over. He was just an awkward, soft-spoken doctor, but he had the charisma of somebody who was sincere. He wasn't like trying to charm people. But this would help push FDR. FDR would use this push to get Social Security, which would be a much smaller but an incredibly important old age pension, which got rid of about 90% of poverty amongst the retired. Don't forget, retirement was a brand new thing in world history that came about with the Industrial Revolution. Another one was the Kingfish. Huey Long, governor, then senator of Louisiana. And he at first supported Roosevelt, but then thought Roosevelt wasn't going far enough. And he called it his share our wealth, or every man a king, would be the slogan, where money would be confiscated through taxation from the very wealthy and then given to every person. They would get a $5,000 homestead, but the big thing was a guaranteed income of $2,000 a year. Then they would cap all income at $1 million, meaning all income over $1 million a year would be taxed at 100%. With the idea being that this would help wage growth, help investment, but also use the funnel money to every single person to promote demand and guarantee that every American can enjoy the American dream. And boy, was this popular, you can imagine, during the height of the Great Depression. he was, he did help people have that populist element of helping the poor of Louisiana, especially in education, but at the same time, he had the element like a political machine and fairly corrupt. But by 1935, it looked like he might run as an independent for president. And this would almost certainly split the Roosevelt coalition and make sure a Republican be elected. It's one of the great what ifs in history. But he was assassinated in 1935, had nothing to do with the share our wealth or running for president. It was local Louisiana politics. But he was assassinated, literally walking out of the front door of the new Capitol he had built in Baton Rouge. It's still one of the great what ifs. What if Huey Long would have ran? Could he split the Democratic vote? Who knows? Might we had President Alf Landon? Could be. So Huey Long built this granite monstrosity. That's the capital of Louisiana. And it is so ugly. This picture does not do the ugliness justice. That's his statue of him emerging from granite, looking at his really ugly capital. And it is really ugly. It looks like something that was built in the Soviet Union in 1955, meaning boxy and ugly. But it was killed right at that front door. So Roosevelt would begin the second New Deal. Now, the first New Deal, this was trying anything. He called that liberal. Some worked, some didn't. But this one would be much bigger, thus be more spending, more programs, and more using liberal economics, not completely, but liberal economics. So let's get to what that was. There are three big laws, and these would four big laws, transform the United States. They are such a big deal. And this would make much of the world, much of the United States that people wanted, or at least thought would be the American dream. So what are they? The first one, Social Security. So has everyone got this? It's an old age pension. And yes, it dramatically alleviates the issue of poverty amongst the elderly. It was not enough to give you your old income back, but it was enough. The idea was to keep people out of poverty, and then along with other savings or other pensions they might get, can enjoy dignified retirement, not having to go to shuffle off into one of these hellholes they called old age homes, which were literally these stark steel buildings that were, or cement buildings that old people were put until they died. Just go put them in place to die, or live off their children, which are their children having a rough time because of the depression. So it would provide an old age pension. I don't know why I put in for parenthesis there, but $15 a month, about $400 a month today. It's hard to compare money then and now, but like I said, it wasn't enough to alleviate the issue of poverty. Like today it's only about a quarter of your previous income, but it's guaranteed and goes up with inflation. So this, no matter what happens, not like the stock market that can collapse like in 2008 or 2021, it's very stable. This is what we call social insurance. So social insurance means we all pay for it. If you work, you pay Social Security. Who's had a job where you had a W-2? W-2, did you notice the line that said FICA, F-I-C-A? That is Social Security. That's Social Security, and that comes off the top. That has nothing to do with income tax. It comes off the top for most workers. It's the biggest tax most workers pay. Originally, it was Social insurance. We all pay. I didn't quite finish that. So now you're paying for people who are retired today, and then so for example, when I retire, you guys better get 2 or 3 jobs because I want to live on my own. Then you will pay for me at 7. And that's the way insurance works. If you have health insurance, I'm on a health insurance plan through the school, it's part of my pay, but the healthy teachers, we all pay. We're in the self-fund right now. And then for those who are ill, then that's what comes out of that pool. Car insurance, safe drivers pay for the one to get wrecked. But it's the way it works. That's social insurance. Almost every country in the world has social insurance for healthcare. The United States does not for most people. Same deal. Everyone pays. It's relatively low because we all pay together, and then that provides health insurance. So it also is unemployment insurance, which is for people who are laid off. The big deal is if there's layoffs, this will give you part of your paycheck, about a quarter to 30% of your paycheck. You only get it if you're laid off or fired. You don't get it if you quit. But if a bunch of people are laid off, it gives them a little bit of money so demand doesn't tank. This was a big deal in COVID. Both happened when Trump was president, but Biden kind of pushed through by more kind of liberal economics. Mostly Democrats, I guess, at that, in 2020, 2021, they doubled the unemployment insurance. So people who lost their job, they didn't have to take a massive hit. So the United States economy actually did fairly well during COVID compared to the rest of the world. Next, the top paid with a payroll tax. So everybody's payroll, not other income, like you get money on the stock market, it's not taxed. But a payroll. Originally it was 1%, went up to 3%, today it's 6.2%. And the employer matches. So today, I pay 6.2% tax and the school district pays 6.2%. If you're self-employed, it's 12.4%. It's a big tax. Most of you, if you did get a job with a W-2, you probably pay no federal income tax, but you pay Social Security. But this is big. If you work 10 years of Social Security, you're vested and then you get it. It's a big deal. You might not realize it now, but when you get old, get near retirement or retired, it's a big deal. Couple more things. Income is capped. Originally it was $2,000. Today it is $1,000 or $184,000. All income above that is not taxed. The idea was benefits don't get exponentially large with higher incomes, and so it would capture about 90% of income. That was the plan. Now, what it means is almost all workers, because this is more than double the median wage. Almost all workers pay 6.2%. But let's say you make $1 million a year, which I'm sure is something a lot of people are going through right now. Your income, your tax would be about 2%. And for example, Elon Musk pays no Social Security. I bet it's not even. It's the equivalent of finding spare change under his account for him. So the very wealthy don't pay this. And this would become a big issue down the road, AKA today. So here's Roosevelt signing the bill, and they did a really, actually good job of advertising this. Telling people you have to get a Social Security number. That's where your Social Security number started in 1935. They built up some money, and then 1938, the pension started. And this is the most popular government program. It is such a big deal for most retirees. And in 1983, they raised the tax to deal with, when I say the baby boom generation, I think, oh, you know what that means. Because they knew there'd be this big bubble of retirees. And so they overtaxed, and they put the surplus in a trust fund. The trust fund, I know this sounds weird, but they put it in the safest investment in the world, at least through today, US government treasury bonds. So the Social Security Administration, which is part of the US government, loaned billions of dollars to the US government. So the US government owes Social Security money right now, which I know is weird, but it has to come from tax revenues, and that's how they did it. This is a cornerstone of liberal economics. Therefore, anybody who is conservative economically despises this. Like the current governor of Montana has badmouthed Social Security many times. And President Trump has contempt for it. Because this goes against conservative economics and it goes against social Darwinism. So conservatives are opposed. This raises wages because a secure retirement makes people more likely to negotiate for higher wages. And here are a couple more of the ads for it. Very, very clever ads, very clever. They put them in post offices back when post offices were a much more important part of daily life. Now, one important thing, if any people today will say Social Security is going broke, no, it can't unless people quit working because it collects taxes from everybody who works. It is not going broke. People who say that are generally conservative want an excuse to come. Just telling you, and you can agree with that or disagree with that, but that's usually what it is. They have an ulterior motive or they don't know what they're talking. But yeah, but there's a problem. It's a problem. They thought about 90% of all income would be collected in 1983 when they rose the taxes. So 90%, there'll be more than enough. The trust fund will cover it, be Social Security benefits, and a moderate pension fund for everybody. The problem is this, we have such vast inequality of wealth that it's less than 80% of all income is being taxed. So now there's a massive hole in what they bring in. And so what they believe is eventually the trust fund is going to go out. And so they'll have to cut Social Security. In 2000, it was originally going to be 2035, but President Trump's massive tax cuts in 2025, that's it. They originally thought it'd be 2035, but his massive tax cuts last year so cut government revenues that they think now it's going to be 2030. About 25% cut of Social Security is coming, which for most people who are retired, which is most of their retirement, is a huge cut in their expected living. This is a massive cut, but they're conservative. This goes against conservative economics. They are very conservative. That's why they're not doing anything about it. This is kind of a big deal. And with the newest, the president always puts out a budget proposal, every year, then it goes to Congress and they back it up. But President Trump's budget proposal he put out last Thursday, that would probably be about 2002. Because it's going to be such a massive increase in investment by about 40%. And cuts in everything else. So it's tough. I should have, speaking about that cut, I got to mention this because the irony just grips me. What's going to happen around the moon here in about 4 or 6 months? You know what's going to happen? Artemis spacecraft, it's going to go around the moon. We'll be out of communication for about an hour. And it's just fascinating to me because the current budget proposal from about last Thursday is going to cut gas by about 50%. And so they're hyping this thing and won't have enough money to do anything else like that ever again. So the irony is just, it's just astounding to me. So, hey, I remember the first movie. Like I said, so let's get to the next big one. Oh, so this would be huge in alleviating poverty. I can't even begin to tell you what a big deal Social Security is. And it's big cut, big cut. Everybody here might be really paying attention to this. Next, the Wagner Act. The Wagner Act would allow for labor unions. Companies must recognize a union. If the law is very clear, it says if 1 over 50% of the workers vote for a union, the union is recognized. I like the way they write that. 1 over 50%. And that means that the union can collectively bargain. If it originates for private, then it's going to be for public because there's a big attack on public unions. But this would open the door to labor unions. And Roosevelt, this fit in with liberal economics for 2 big reasons. First off, it's the economic idea of, oh, almost forgot something. It created the National Labor Relations Board, which would certify elections, but also if workers are punished on the job, which happens all the time, they can take a complaint to the National Labor Relations Board. But like any board, if the president is relatively pro-labor, this board will be relatively strong. If the president is anti-labor, is relatively weak. Biden was relatively pro-labor union. President Trump is rapidly anti-labor union. In fact, they've it's now in the courts about firing 2 members of it, and they haven't appointed anybody else. So the National Labor Relations Board doesn't have a quorum, therefore that's no time. So they're not doing, so the workers are kind of on. But anyways, the goal is to raise wages. Labor unions raise wages. Now, of course, that can be an issue of company. Money, this, the whole issue of wages can be very complex, but the other thing is this. Roosevelt wanted these liberal economic policies to continue. So labor unions, he made it very clear. It's the Democratic Party who did that, and therefore unions vote Democratic. And for 30 years, this was a huge part of the Democratic coalition. And this graph shows the number of people joining labor unions with the Wagner Act. By 1950, 36% of all workers would be in a labor union. And this ripples to other jobs who don't have labor unions. Companies who don't want labor unions will feel obligated to raise their wages a little bit and other benefits to keep unions out. So high union density raises wages for all workers. And so you can always find places that the median wages are relatively high when they have pretty high labor unions. The US up to the 1980s, like Canada now or Germany, places like that. And you can see Roosevelt in the factory I joined a union. Even though he distrusted some of the union bosses, he also understood the economic value of this. And so the world I was born into was pretty highly unionized. And that is not the way it is today. With the conservative revival in the 1980s, union membership dropped. Here's union membership dropping now, it's below 10%. And most of those workers are public employees like me. And this shows what happens with union membership. It's always kind of interesting to me. Here's union membership declining. And here's share of income going to the top 10%, meaning less wages for other people. Now, you can certainly understand the point of view of those who feel that labor unions might unfairly raise wages or be tied to other things, but big deal. Next, the Wealth Tax Act of 1936. It's also called the Soak the Rich Bill. And this was rich people speculating in the stock market and real estate. These money changers should be punished for what they did and also make sure they never do it again. And so it would be a series of tax rates that would have the highest progressive income tax rate be 79%. Nobody paid 79% of their income. That's not the way taxes work. But let me explain the rest of the law. So it would also include a progressive estate tax. So very large inheritance would be taxed. Now, 90% of inheritance would have no tax or very little tax. But the very, very large ones would be taxed and therefore at least bite into the kind of wealthy aristocracy. And here's Roosevelt. It's calling them Pied Pipers. So there we have Huey Long and Townsend pushing him for the wealth tax. Kind of using that, basically saying, we'll do that. 79, that's not 100%. And the main reasons, first off, that's where the wealth is. So you tax where the wealth is, but there's something else. Profits in capitalism go to the top, the owners. So that's where you tax. And also would equalize some of them. That's the great engine of capitalism. The profits give a great incentive for people to show initiative and creativity and take risks. But at the same time, creates inequalities that could alleviate. But there's another reason. After every single tax cut geared for the wealthy, there was a speculative bubble. All of a sudden, wealthy people have this big influx of money, and what do? Roll the die. Stock market, Florida real estate, cryptocurrency. So this discouraged bubbles. Discouraged bubbles by taking that extra income and reducing it. So sure, they can still be incredibly rich. They just won't have that vast amount of money. And then a few more things. it would boost investment. People don't want to pay taxes. And so instead of paying themselves higher wages or more tax stock or whatever it might be, they invest it back in the company. And in the long run, high marginal income tax rates for the very wealthy boost wages. This graph is supposed to show up, but it doesn't do it very well, so I'm not even going to. But that's the idea. Now, of course, that is the liberal economics philosophy. Conservative economics say people will just quit investing and quit working because it's going to be taxed at a high rate, then they'll just quit. And so we have two different point of views, but I should add that the best economic time in American history, the highest marginal income tax rate in the 50s and most of the 60s was 91%. Significantly higher than today. Why? Because that meant, or why did that matter? More money for down the line. And so let me show you how it looks. These are marginal taxes. Everybody pays the same tax for the same dollar. Your first in this chart, or your first $100, doesn't matter if you make $1 million a year or $200 a year, that first $100 is taxed at the same rate. And here's the 1936 law, and these are all the rates. This might look complicated, but it's not. So let me explain to you by cutting it in half. So that's it. So let's say you make $2,000 a year. Just throwing a number on $2,000 a year. This is a different economy, a lot less inflation. You pay 4%. Does that make sense to everybody? If you make $5,000 a year, for the first 4,000 of that, you pay 4%. For the next 1,000, you pay 8. And that's how it works. So if you make $11,000 a year, it's 4%. Next two, 8%. Next two, 9%. Next two, 10%. And for the next $1,000, you pay 12%. Then I jumped it down, 11%. That's how marginal income tax rates work. So let's say you're one of the less than 100 people in 1936 who made over $5 million a year. Let's say you made $6 million a year. For that $1 million over 5, you pay 79%. And you pay all these rates. Now, if that looks complex, it's not at all. That's easy. That's easy. That's really easy. So when I first started doing my income tax, I do my income tax every year. When I first did it, I had to be hand and paper. That's how we did it back then. Again, but be clear, I'm old. And you come up with your taxable income, and the Internal Revenue Service, who collects taxes, created this law. Send everybody a little book. Your taxable income, you open the book up. Has all these numbers in back, has all the tables. You find your income, it tells you how much tax you pay. So they just did the math for you. That's easy. Why are there accountants? To figure out what your income is. That's the hard part. Have you heard of deductions? Deductions lower your taxable income. That's why tax laws are important. Because everybody with a lot of money will try to get their business or whatever they're into deducted from taxes. Do they? Yeah. Tax breaks are mostly going to people with a lot of money. So every single person paying taxes right now, they get a standard deduction. In 2026, that deduction is $16,000 for every person. So if you make $12,000 this year, taxable, or $12,000, you have to report that to the IRS. When you figure out your taxable income, you subtract $16,000 from that. Meaning, what gets taxed? Nothing. You don't pay federal income tax because of the standard deduction. You pay Social Security, we don't pay that. You make $20,000, pay $4,000. Well, it's $4,000 taxable. You put it in the tax. You're married, it's $32,000. That's the way taxes work. There are other deductions, but they mostly apply to the top very 10%. You can deduct mortgage payments. Part of your healthcare can be deducted, but about a very small part, things like that. So here's 1963. Here's the taxes in 1963. I'm showing you this because 91% of the income over $400,000. That's 1963. Well, conservative economics is totally opposed. This takes money away from the wealthy. And remember, conservative economics, you want money to go to the wealthy because they are the ones who know how to create prosperity. And in the 1980s, the country returned back to trade. There's going to be massive tax. I forgot the S. Tax cuts 81, 86, 2001. And then in your lifetime, 2017, that's supposed to be 2025. 2025. Massive tax cuts. And that's where we are today. For example, they cut the taxes. Remember all those rates? In 1988, there were only 2 rates. 28% was the highest tax rate and a massive tax cut for the very wealthy. Which, yeah, I mean, that's trickle down economics. That's what they want. And that's our tax rates today. It is much more regressive. So let's get back to this. See, single, 10%, single 12,000, 12, 22, up to 37% for income over $640,000. So let's see how your memory is. Let's go back to this. Let's say you make $20,000 a year. I told you what the standard deduction is. What tax rate do you like? Do you remember what the standard deduction is? I told you. So how much, what tax rate do you think? What tax rate? 10% of that already paid $400. That's how your taxable income is $4,000, your rate is 10%. Here's Mary. Most people are in. Most people, almost all. And that's how income tax works. Not have to worry about that. Everybody put down the WPA for the last thing. Oh, we're starting tomorrow, so it's about ready to rain. Oh yeah, should have run. Hey, what are you bringing in tomorrow? Notes. Notes. But the last little bit of the New Deal, and then talk about Nazis. National Socialists. Why were there so many? Yeah. A week wasn't long enough.
Wait, there's oh, like I don't think it's but it's like because I don't see the drawbacks in like it's an oath then.
Yeah. The problem is, the drawbacks, sometimes you might get the worst of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which kind of happen in what's happening. But sure, like Roosevelt, he did this, but he also, I didn't talk about this, but he did Russian finance corporation. And he did things that were specifically designed to get all to business started. That's kind of, yeah. So you did that multiple, and no one is 100%.
So it's like I saw a chance of a little agree on that, but I still agree.
They just got it your.
It's great. Writing class, they wanted to say. Science, I would say, maybe writing. Science.
Hey, let's do a map.
To do it or turn it in? Because I have it already done.
Wow.
Like, no. Are we turning in our movie things today?
Yeah, the movie. So you got the map, rip off the back. I don't need the directions. And then you can recycle it away or whatever.
The diagram print isn't technically rated. Okay.
Yeah, there's only movies that are rated R.
Like I tried to figure out the very hard. It's like it's.
Is that what's the older one?
I watched the older one.
Yeah, it's-
1950s.
Yeah.
It's really.
It is a very well, yeah.
It was a really good movie, but then it was like really sad when it ended. It was so. The Diary Man Frank. It's like they spent so long in that freaking annex, and then just for the freaking Nazis to blow off the door and Exactly. So.
Lawyers. Yeah.
How people like.
Yeah, how about this? Show me what you have done, I'll give you the back. Let's rip it off.
I think it did, because it's like.
Show me what we got.
What?
The base.
That's on the belt. I saw Tom on Friday. Oh, you're on the mile? Yes, I did. What was the time?
Gotta go.
Cygnus. So. Yeah, I know.
Everyone's excited. The long spring break nightmare is over.
You know what? Where'd you?
Finally
place
back.
it? I'm not sure. There's a lot. There's a lot. What's
Hey, what's happening?
mile? It's in the middle of the dot. And is this?
What you do that? What you mean?
Everyone take out your map and take out the extra credit.
Yeah, and also these aren't even timers that are logging in meter A1.
Sound good?
Yeah.
We have the ACT on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
We have been you.
We got stuck there. Dude, running for by itself.
I have nothing to do on those days.
Bulls.
I'll watch a few of you take a test, that's it.
He's so. Now I'm so fun. Where's she?
All right, take out your map.
I see it doesn't. So.
I will do that.
So we might get up to 60 or 70 mile per hour winds again tomorrow. Yeah, it's shape of things come. Any questions on the map? I'll be glad to point vaguely at a map. That would help. Here. That up?
Yes,
It's over there.
perfect.
Everyone find Vichy France? Unoccupied France right there. That's all. As long as you don't. Yeah,
How about, I will.
Iwo Jima. Why don't let's do this real quick. Right there. Here's Japan, right here, north of Guam,
All right.
a little bit northwest of Guam. I know, we just get it. Yeah, there's just vague little dots, hard to see for the islands, but also gives you an idea of just how massive World War II was. Any other questions, anything? Okay. I don't want the direction part, so rip that off very carefully, and you can recycle it on your way out or whatever. Just make sure your name is on the map and turn it up. And then take out your extra credit for anyone who did it. Name is on it, name. Beautiful. Awesome. Very proud. I'll take it. Very good. Why only one in this row? Extra credit movie. Anyone do extra credit? All right, if you have an extra credit and the same deal, if it's not rated R, don't worry about it. But if it is rated R, I do need a note. My plan is to grade these while you guys are doing your ACT. Isn't that going to be fun? I get to hang out. Might be. Battleground? Do you like it?
Sign up for, oh, it's for teaching. I don't understand.
Is there a belt?
Oh, I already know this one.
Yeah, it's still at a time for the war got. The war was not as romanticized yet. It's kind of great. You know, they have to do things. I think it's a very good, one of the best war movies. All right. Next, does anyone have any question on the notes? Any ones you could not find, any ones you weren't sure about the notes, like double V you got, for massacre of the United States. Any ones you could not find. The ones that people had trouble with. Double B, I think the OPA, got that rationing. It did work. It helped with inflation. After the war exploded again. On the other side, it's pretty easy. I know that one day, you're fine. I know. No questions? All right, so today, let me finish the last, today and tomorrow, finish the last of each of the New Deal, the Great Depression, and start Nazis. We'll get to National Socialists. And then we got to start thinking about the APUSH. So if you're taking it, it is May 8th. It's a month away. We have one more DBQ we're going to do in class. And then, only a month away. Isn't that exciting? And then nothing but fitness. Running, blocks, walls, except for your baskets. And so we got some review things and things like that we got to do. So we're getting good. We're finishing here on right before spring break. Last March. I still recording this? I still am recording. Let me get off this real quick. I thought I hit.